Sometimes the smallest moments carry the heaviest weight. This is one of those moments, the kind that stays with you long after the room goes quiet. The rain had been falling since before dawn, thin and steady, turning the streets into mirrors that reflected a city always in a hurry. Inside the old stone hall, warmth hovered in the air, mixed with the scent of waxed floors and something faintly metallic, though no one could ever place it. People whispered that the building had stood for centuries, long before names were written down properly. Tonight, it hosted a charity gathering, elegant and controlled, the kind where voices stayed low and smiles never reached the eyes. At the center of it all sat the man everyone feared without understanding why. He wore a simple dark suit, perfectly tailored but never flashy. His posture was relaxed, almost careless, yet nothing about him felt weak. His eyes, deep and watchful, missed nothing. Some called him a billionaire. Others spoke in rumors, careful to laugh after, as if laughter could protect them. Only a few knew the truth, and those few never spoke it aloud. He was the Vampire King. Not the monster from stories told to scare children, but something far older and quieter. Power wrapped itself around him like a shadow that never fully disappeared. He had ruled unseen for generations, shaping events with a word here, a silence there. And yet tonight his expression was distant, as though the noise around him belonged to another world. Across the hall, near a side table where untouched plates were being cleared, stood a young woman. She didn't belong here, that much was obvious to anyone who cared to look. Her dress was clean but worn at the seams, borrowed or altered too many times. Her shoes pinched her feet and she kept shifting her weight to ease the pain. She held a small tray, hands steady from long practice, eyes lowered out of habit rather than fear. Her name was Alara. She had come not as a guest, but as temporary staff, hired for the night through an agency that asked few questions and paid even less. She needed the money, her mother was ill. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind, heavy and unfinished. Alara had learned early that dignity did not pay bills, but kindness sometimes returned in unexpected ways. She moved quietly between tables, refilling glasses, collecting napkins, making herself invisible. That was a skill she had perfected over years. People rarely noticed those who served them, and when they did, it was usually to complain. As she passed the central table, something made her pause. Well, the man sitting there looked tired. Not the surface tiredness of a long day, but something deeper, like exhaustion carried across centuries. His hand rested on the table, fingers pale against the dark wood. For just a second, Alara saw a tremor pass through them, so subtle no one else would have caught it. Her heart tightened. She didn't know why she felt drawn to him. She didn't know who he really was. She only saw a man surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. The kind of loneliness that pressed in on the chest and made breathing feel heavier than it should. As she told herself to keep walking, but her feet didn't listen. A glass slipped slightly on her tray as she adjusted her grip, and the soft sound caught his attention. Slowly, the Vampire King looked up. When his eyes met hers, the world seemed to narrow, as if the space between them had folded in on itself. Most people flinched under his gaze. Alara did not. She felt the weight of it, yes, the strange pull, the quiet danger, but beneath it she sensed something else. Pain, old and unhealed. Without thinking, she spoke. "Sir," she said gently, her voice barely louder than the rain outside, "are you feeling all right?" The table fell silent. Those nearby froze, eyes widening in disbelief. Staff were not supposed to speak unless spoken to. Guests certainly weren't supposed to interrupt him. A few people leaned back instinctively, as if distance could shield them from whatever punishment might come. The Vampire King did not answer right away. He stared at her, truly stared, as though seeing her was an effort he hadn't made in a very long time. Her eyes were honest, tired, and warm. There was no ambition in them, no calculation, just concern. Well, something inside him shifted. It had been centuries since anyone had asked him that question without wanting something in return. Power, protection, favor. Even fear had its own selfishness. But this girl, standing in worn shoes with rain-damp hair escaping its pins, asked him nothing but a simple truth. "Are you feeling all right?" He felt the echo of old memories stir, a time before the crown, before blood and immortality had hardened his world, a time when someone had asked him the same question by firelight, their hand warm in his. His jaw tightened. "I am fine," he said at last, his voice calm, controlled, carrying authority without effort. Alara nodded as if she believed him, but before she turned away, she did something unexpected. She lowered her voice even further and added, "You don't have to be strong all the time." Her words landed softly, yet they struck harder than any blade. The Vampire King went completely still. Around them, conversations slowly resumed, unaware of the fracture forming at the center of the room. Alara moved on, heart pounding now, unsure why she had spoken at all. She told herself it was nothing, just kindness, just a moment. But from that second on, his eyes followed her. He watched the way she helped an elderly guest find a seat, how she slipped an extra piece of bread into a child's napkin when no one was looking. He saw the quiet courage in her movements, the humility that did not ask to be praised. And for the first time in a very long time, the Vampire King felt something close to fear. Not fear of exposure, not fear of enemies. Fear of what her presence was awakening in him. Because he knew, deep within his immortal bones, that if this girl ever learned who he truly was, her kindness would either save him or destroy everything he had built. As the rain outside began to fall harder, he made a decision he had avoided for centuries. He would speak to her again. And nothing about his world would remain the Sameth night did not end when the guests left. For some moments, the quiet after mattered more than the noise before. The hall slowly emptied, heels clicking away, voices fading into the rain. Chairs were pushed in, candles snuffed out one by one. The warmth thinned, replaced by a hollow stillness that always followed gatherings like this. Alara moved with the other staff, clearing tables, stacking plates, letting her body stay busy so her thoughts wouldn't drift back to him. But they did anyway. She kept seeing his eyes, not the power in them but the pause, the way he had gone silent as if her words had reached somewhere no one else had touched. It unsettled her. Kindness was supposed to be simple. Say it, mean it, move on. This felt heavier. Behind her, she felt it before she heard it. A presence. Not loud, not threatening, just unmistakable. Lara. Her name spoken in his voice sounded different, deeper, like it carried echoes. She turned slowly, heart tightening again. He stood a few steps away, no longer seated, no longer surrounded. Without the crowd, he seemed taller, sharper, more real. The shadows leaned toward him as if they belonged there. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, assuming she had crossed a line. "I didn't mean to." "I know what you meant," he interrupted gently. That gentleness unsettled her more than anger would have. They stood there, the vast hall between them suddenly too small. She noticed now how pale he was, how still. No nervous movements, no wasted motion, like a man who had learned patience by surviving longer than anyone else. "Why did you say that to me?" he asked. Alara hesitated. The honest answer felt too exposed. "Because you looked like someone who needed to hear it." His lips curved slightly, not a smile, more like a memory of one. "Most people look at me and see strength or danger." She met his gaze, steady despite herself. "Strength doesn't mean you're not tired." The words hung between them. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not pride, regret. You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. She frowned. "I work here." That's not what I mean." Before she could ask, a sharp pain lanced through his chest. He barely reacted, but Alara saw it this time. His hand tightened against the table edge, his breath caught just once. You're hurt," she said. "No," he replied too quickly. She stepped closer without thinking, lowering her voice again. "You are." Her nearness did something dangerous. Her warmth, her pulse, the steady human rhythm of her breathing. He felt the hunger stir, ancient and demanding. He had mastered it long ago, buried it under discipline and isolation, but tonight it pressed harder. Well, he took a step back. You should go home, he said, now. Alara saw the tension in his shoulders, the warning beneath his calm. Something in her screamed that she was standing too close to a truth she didn't understand. But another part of her, quieter and braver, refused to leave him like this. I can sit, she said softly. Just for a minute, you don't have to talk. No one had offered him silence in centuries, only questions, accusations, demands. He studied her face, searching for deception, for fear, for anything that would make this easier to refuse. He found none. Against his better judgment, he nodded. They sat a careful distance between them. The rain drummed against the tall windows. Alara folded her hands in her lap, grounding herself. He stared ahead, jaw tight, fighting something she couldn't see. You asked me a question, he said after a long pause. I didn't answer honestly. She didn't push, she waited. I am not all right, he continued. I haven't been for a very long time. The admission cost him more than blood ever had. Alara felt her chest ache. You don't have to explain. I do, he said, almost to himself, because people like you don't stay unaware forever. Her breath caught, people like me. Kind, he said, and brave enough to ask. The lights dimmed further as the last staff member left. Somewhere in the building, a door locked. Alara realized too late that they were alone. He turned to her fully now, eyes dark, intent, and heavy with a truth that pressed against the edges of the world she knew. If you stay, he said quietly, there are things you cannot unlearn. Her heart pounded. Every sensible instinct told her to leave, to thank him, to walk out into the rain, to forget this strange man and his strange sadness. But she didn't stand. She lifted her eyes to his and asked the question that changed everything. What are you? The vampire king closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, the silence between them felt like the moment before a storm breaks. There are moments when the world gives you a chance to step back. This was not one of them. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous all at once. What are you? The vampire king did not answer immediately. He stood and moved toward the tall windows, his back to her now. Outside, the rain had slowed to a soft, steady fall, like the city itself was holding its breath. His reflection in the glass looked older than the man Alara had been speaking to, heavier, shaped by centuries she could not imagine. I am not something that fits easily into words, he said at last. Alara rose slowly, her hands trembling just enough that she clasped them together to hide it. Fear had finally found her, but it did not feel sharp. It felt sad, like standing at the edge of a story you already know will hurt. You don't have to lie, she said quietly. I can tell when someone is hiding, but not when they're pretending. Well, that made him turn. His eyes met hers again, and this time she saw it clearly. The restraint, the hunger, the sorrow wrapped tightly around both. If I tell you, he said, your life will change. My life is already changing, she replied. I just don't know why. He let out a slow breath, one that sounded more human than he intended. I have lived longer than any man should, he said. I have watched empires rise and disappear. I have loved people whose names no longer exist. I drink blood to survive, and I rule others like me not through fear alone but through law. Alara's knees weakened, and she gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. You're saying her voice faltered. A vampire, he finished, and not just any vampire. The room seemed to tilt. Every story she had ever heard rushed into her mind at once. Monsters, shadows, death, yet none of them matched the man standing in front of her, watching her as if her reaction mattered more than his own safety. She searched his face, waiting for her fear to turn into panic. It didn't. Instead, tears burned at the back of her eyes, surprising her. You look so lonely," she whispered. The words struck him harder than her question had. "I was not always a king," he said. "I became one because someone had to stop us from becoming monsters. I built rules, boundaries, I chose control over chaos." "And did it work?" She asked. For the world," he said, "not for me." He stepped closer, stopping well short of touching her. "Do you know what immortality really is? It is watching everyone you protect grow old and disappear while you remain the same. It is learning not to care because caring never ends well." Alara shook her head slowly. "That's not true." A muscle in his jaw tightened. "It is." "If it were," she said, her voice steady now, "you wouldn't be hurting like this." Silence stretched again, thick and intimate. Somewhere deep within him, the hunger surged, drawn to her heartbeat, to the living warmth he had denied himself for so long. He took another step back, fighting it. "Oh, you should be afraid," he said. "You should live." "Will you hurt me?" she asked. The honesty of the question stunned him. "No," he answered without hesitation. "Never." She nodded as if that settled something inside her. "Then I'll stay." In that moment, he realized how dangerous she truly was, not because she was weak, but because she trusted him. And trust, to a creature like him, was a blade turned inward. A sudden sound echoed through the hall, footsteps, slow, intentional. His body went rigid. "We are not alone," he said. From the shadows near the entrance, a figure emerged, tall, pale, eyes glowing faintly red. His presence felt colder, sharper. "Your Majesty," the stranger said with a slight bow, "you have been absent longer than expected." Alara's breath caught. She instinctively moved closer to the vampire king, though she didn't realize it. The newcomer's gaze flicked to her, curiosity and something darker crossing his face. "A human," he asked softly, "here." The vampire king stepped forward, placing himself between them. "Oh, she is under my protection," he said. The words were simple. Oh, the consequences were not. The other vampire smiled slowly. "Then the council will want answers." As the shadows thickened around them, Alara understood one terrifying truth. By asking one question, she had stepped into a world that would never let her go. Some choices feel small when you make them. You only understand their weight once the door has already closed behind you. The air in the hall grew colder, as if the walls themselves were listening. Alara stood very still, aware of every breath she took. The other vampire's eyes lingered on her longer than they should have, not with hunger exactly, but with calculation. She felt like a detail that did not belong in a carefully balanced design. "The council does not welcome surprises," he said calmly, "especially human ones." The vampire king did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The council answers to me." A flicker of tension passed across the other vampire's face. Respect warred with resentment. "You taught us that no human may know our truth. That rule has kept us hidden for centuries." "And it will remain," the king replied, "because she will not speak." Alara looked at him startled. He was certain, not hopeful, certain. "I won't," she said before thinking. "I swear." The other vampire laughed softly. "Humans always do." The sound made something sharp stir in the king's chest. He turned slightly toward Alara, lowering his voice. "You trust me. I need to know if that trust is real." Oh, she met his gaze. "It is." That was enough. The vampire king straightened, power rolling quietly off him like an approaching storm. The shadows deepened, pulling away from the intruder as if reminded of their place. "Oh, she is leaving," he said, "now." "And if the council objects," the other vampire asked, "then they will learn why I am king." The silence that followed was absolute. At last the other vampire bowed again, slower this time. "As you command." His eyes returned to Alara, lingering with something like warning. Be careful what you carry with you, human. Some knowledge has teeth. He vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a chill that slowly faded. Alara exhaled, realizing she had been holding her breath. I'm sorry, she said, her voice shaking now. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Oh, you didn't, the king replied. You revealed it. He moved toward her, stopping just close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. Not unpleasant, controlled. They will watch you, he said, every step, every choice. Her stomach tightened. Then I really should go. Yes, he said, but not alone. He took off his coat and draped it around her shoulders before she could protest. It was warm, strangely, carrying a faint, clean scent she couldn't place. I can walk myself, she said. I know, he answered. This isn't about that. They stepped out into the rain together. The city looked different now, sharper, darker at the edges. Alara pulled the coat tighter, aware of how exposed she suddenly felt. They walked in silence for a while. The sound of rain filled the spaces where questions waited. Why me? She asked finally. He didn't stop walking, because you saw me when no one else did. She swallowed, and now you go home, he said, and you try to forget. She laughed softly without humor. You know I can't. He stopped then, turning to face her under a flickering street light. Rain traced lines down his face, making him look almost human. That is why this ends here, he said, for your safety. Something in his voice told her this was not a suggestion. She handed the coat back to him slowly. Their fingers brushed for the briefest second, and the contact sent a shock through them both. He pulled away first. Thank you, she said, for telling me the truth. He nodded once. As she turned and walked away, the vampire king stood motionless, listening to her footsteps fade into the rain. He told himself he had done the right thing. He did not see the small figure watching from the far end of the street. And he did not yet know that the council had already made their decision. The night had claimed her, and it would not let go easily. Sometimes danger does not arrive with noise. Sometimes it waits, patient and smiling, until you believe you are safe. Alara did not sleep that night. She lay awake in her small room, listening to the rain drip from the edge of the roof, the vampire king's coat folded neatly at the foot of her bed. She should have returned it. She knew that. Yet her hands had refused, as if letting go would erase the only proof that the night had been real. Every sound outside made her tense. Every shadow felt heavier than it had before. She had lived her whole life in quiet fear of ordinary things, unpaid bills, illness, loss. This was different. This fear had shape. At dawn, she rose and went to work anyway. Routine felt like protection. The cafe on the corner smelled of fresh bread and bitter coffee. Familiar faces nodded at her, unaware that her world had cracked open. She moved through her tasks slowly, carefully, as if she were afraid that moving too fast would draw attention. It didn't work. By midday, she felt it again. That presence, not the vampire king, this one felt colder, curious. She turned to find a man seated alone by the window, untouched coffee in front of him. His smile was polite, his eyes were not. Laura, he said softly, may I? Her pulse quickened. Do I know you? No, he replied, but we share acquaintances. She stepped back, every instinct screaming, you should leave. He chuckled, you remind me of him, straight to the truth. Before she could move, the cafe seemed to dim. Sounds dulled as if the world had been wrapped in cloth. No one else reacted, no one noticed. You are protected, the man said, for now. For now, she whispered. The council is divided, he explained. Some wish to erase you, others are curious, you are unprecedented. Veer tightened her chest. I didn't ask for this. No, he agreed, you asked a question. He leaned closer, and he chose you. The words hit her harder than any threat. Why does that matter? She asked. Because the vampire king does not choose, the man said. He endures, he controls, he survives by not caring. A flicker of anger rose in her. You're wronged. The man smiled wider. Then you already understand how dangerous you are. The cafe door opened and sound rushed back in. The man stood, placing a coin on the table. Be careful, Alara, he said gently. They will test him through you. He was gone before she could answer. Across the city, the vampire king felt it. The moment Alara's fear spiked, something inside him snapped tight. He had spent centuries mastering distance, yet the bond formed by her trust pulled at him like a wound that refused to close. They've found her, he said quietly. Around him, the council chamber stirred. Stone walls, ancient symbols, faces carved from patience and blood. You broke your own law, one elder said. Now you must repair it. I will not sacrifice her, the king replied. Then you risk war, another warned. He rose slowly, power filling the room. Then so be it. Back in her room that night, Alara clutched the coat to her chest, tears slipping free at last. She didn't understand why she mattered in a world this old and cruel. She only knew one thing. If they came for her, the vampire king would come too. And when he did, he would be forced to choose between the crown he had protected for centuries and the human who had seen his heart. The knock on her door came softly, too softly, and Alara knew the waiting was over. Some endings arrive quietly. They do not shatter the world, they change it. Alara stood frozen as the knock came again, gentle, patient, as if whoever waited outside already knew she would open the door. Her hand shook as she reached for the latch. For a brief moment, she considered running, hiding, pretending she wasn't there. But she had never been that kind of person. As she opened the door, the hallway was empty. Then the air shifted. Time seemed to slow, the way it does just before something irreversible happens. Shadows stretched along the walls, bending inward, and a presence filled the space behind her. Alara, the vampire king said softly. She turned, relief and fear crashing together in her chest. He stood inside her room now, though she hadn't seen him enter. His expression was no longer distant or controlled. It was bare. They were watching, she whispered. I know, he replied. They wanted to see what I would do. She looked at him, really looked at him. Not the king, not the myth. Just a man carrying centuries of restraint like a burden. Oh, you came anyway, she said. Oh, yes. The simplicity of the answer broke something open inside her. From the hallway, the temperature dropped. Figures began to emerge one by one, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The council had arrived, not to attack but to judge. You risk everything for her, an elder said. Why? The vampire king did not turn. He kept his gaze on Alara. Because she reminded me what I once was, he said, and what I have been afraid to be again. The elder's voice hardened. She is human. So was I, he replied, once. Alara stepped forward before she could stop herself. I don't want power, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I don't want secrets or protection. I just didn't want him to be alone. The council murmured, unsettled. You would bind yourself to this world, one asked her, to a life of danger. She swallowed. I already live with danger. I just chose kindness instead of fear. The silence fell. The vampire king felt it then, the old hunger, the ancient rule pressing against his chest. He could silence this forever with one command, or he could change it. Oh, he knelt. Oh, the gesture sent shock through the room. I will not turn her, he said. I will not rule through erasure. If she lives human, and I will step out of the shadows to protect both our worlds openly. The elders recoiled. That would end centuries of secrecy. Oh, yes, he said, and centuries of loneliness. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the eldest among them sighed, a sound like stone grinding against time. The world is changing, she said. Perhaps we must as well. She raised her hand. The human stays, untouched, unbound, watched over. The shadows loosened their grip. The council faded away, leaving only the quiet hum of the city outside. Alara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Is it over? For tonight, he said. Days turned into weeks. The world did not end, it shifted. The Vampire King was seen more often, no longer hiding behind intermediaries. He rebuilt laws that protected humans instead of feeding on their silence. Whispers spread, not of fear, but of restraint. Alara returned to her life, still working, still caring for her mother, but no longer invisible. Not because she sought attention, but because she carried herself differently now. Stronger, seen. Sometimes he visited her cafe, sitting quietly by the window. They talked about ordinary things, weather, books, small hopes. He never touched her without permission, never fed on her. His restraint became legend. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the city gold, Alara asked him, "Do you still wish you never answered my question?" He looked at her for a long time, then shook his head. No, he said, because one question reminded me that power means nothing without compassion. She smiled, and for the first time in centuries, the Vampire King felt something close to peace. Not because he ruled the darkness, but because someone had seen him in it and chosen not to look away.